I own this plane.
Move to the back of the plane right now, or I will have security drag you there. Emily Carter's voice cracked through the cabin so sharply that even the ice in the crystal glasses seemed to stop clinking. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. The low hum of the jet engines suddenly felt smaller than the silence she had created. Danielle Brooks did not move. She sat in seat 2A, with one hand resting on the leather armrest and the other folded over a slim black phone in her lap. Late afternoon light poured through the oval window beside her, painting a stripe of gold across her navy blazer. Her face stayed calm. Too calm. Not the calm of surrender. The calm of someone who had already measured the room and found it lacking. Across the aisle, Richard Foster lowered his newspaper by an inch. His wife, Helen, stilled her knitting needles in midair. A younger man in a gray cashmere pullover, all polished shoes and expensive watch, lifted his brows and leaned back as if he wanted distance from whatever was about to happen. 2 rows behind them, Chloe Simmons pressed manicured fingers to her pearls and whispered to her companion, loud enough to be heard. Well, she's got nerve. Emily heard that and drew herself taller. 42, immaculate, blonde hair pinned into not a single strand out of place. She wore her uniform like a badge of personal virtue. Her smile had vanished now. What remained was something harder, something meaner, the kind of expression that did not ask questions because it had already judged the answer. "I'm not asking again," she said. Danielle lifted her eyes. Dark, steady, unreadable. "Then don't." The words landed softly. That was what unsettled people. No tremor, no plea, no effort to explain herself to strangers who had already decided what they wanted to believe. Emily gave a short, humorless laugh. "You people always do this. You push and push, then act offended when there are consequences." A chill moved through the cabin. Not loud, not visible, but real. It traveled in the shifting shoulders of passengers, in the way a businessman suddenly stared too hard at his drink, in the way Helen Foster's mouth tightened though she said nothing. Everyone heard what Emily had said. No one mistook it. Danielle's jaw set, just once. A tiny movement, easy to miss. But the narrator of every room is the one who sees what others hide, and in that moment her patience narrowed into something sharp enough to cut glass. At the front of the cabin, Megan Reed froze with a service tray in both hands. 26, new enough to still believe rules were supposed to protect people. Her eyes flicked from Emily to Danielle, then to the manifest clipped near the galley wall. Her throat worked. She knew something was wrong, knew it in the hot flush crawling up her neck, in the weak tremble in her fingers, in the sick little voice inside her begging her to check the list before this got worse. But Emily was still talking. "This section is for premium passengers," she said, each word clipped in public, "not for someone who thinks she can sit where she doesn't belong." A few people nodded, not because they knew, because they wanted the world to stay arranged in the order that made them comfortable. Danielle looked past Emily then, not at the woman, but through her, as if she could already see the collapse waiting ahead. Outside, the sun flashed across the wing. Inside, the air had gone thin. "Careful," Danielle said quietly. "You are making a mistake you won't be able to take back." Emily's mouth curled. "That sounds like a threat." "No," Danielle said, her voice low and even. "It sounds like the truth." And somewhere beneath the polished luxury, beneath the perfume and leather manners, something in that plane shifted. Not enough for the passengers to understand. Not yet. But enough for fear to touch the room for the first time. The plane gleamed under the late afternoon sun, a sleek white body resting on the tarmac like something too expensive to question. Inside, everything was controlled. Soft lighting, polished chrome, leather seats that whispered when you shifted your weight. The kind of space where people expected to be respected without having to ask for it. Danielle Brooks stepped into that space earlier without hesitation, without spectacle. 38, composed, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and understated heels, she carried no designer labels screaming for attention, no assistant trailing behind her, no performance. just presence, the kind that didn't need permission. Emily Carter noticed that immediately. Not the elegance, not the confidence, but the absence of signal she had trained herself to trust. No visible wealth, no attempt to belong. That, to Emily, was enough. Her greeting had been brief, cold. Welcome aboard. No warmth, no eye contact that lingered. A contrast so subtle most would miss it. Danielle did not. Behind Danielle, Richard and Helen Foster had been welcomed differently. Emily's voice softened, her posture opened, her smile widened into something almost affectionate. "Mr. and Mrs. Foster, it's so good to have you with us again." Richard had nodded, satisfied. Helen had smiled back, reassured by familiarity, by recognition, by knowing exactly where she stood in the invisible hierarchy of the cabin. Danielle saw it all, said nothing. Now the tension from that first moment stretched across the cabin like a wire pulled too tight. Emily took a step closer, heels clicking softly but sharply against the floor. "Let me make this very clear," she said, lowering her voice just enough to sound controlled, but still loud enough for others to hear. "This is not your seat." Danielle's fingers rested lightly on the armrest. No grip, no tension, just stillness. "Then you should check your system again." Emily exhaled through her nose, a thin, controlled release. "I don't need to check anything." 2 rows back, Chloe Simmons leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. "This is getting ridiculous," she whispered, not bothering to hide it anymore. "Why doesn't she just move?" Her companion shrugged. "Because she knows she's wrong." Across the aisle, David Miller shifted in his seat. Early 50s, quiet, observant. He had seen enough rooms like this to recognize when something wasn't about policy. His gaze moved from Emily to Danielle, studying the stillness in her posture, the lack of defensiveness. It didn't match the story being told. Emily crossed her arms, a small gesture, defensive, disguised as authority. "You're holding up departure," she said. "Everyone here is waiting because you refuse to follow a simple instruction." That landed. People shifted. Subtle irritation flickered across faces. Time mattered. Comfort mattered. Order mattered more. Danielle let the silence sit for a beat. Then, softly, "No, they're waiting because you haven't done your job." The words cut cleaner than shouting ever could. Emily's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "You assumed," Danielle said, her tone steady, almost conversational. "You decided who belongs here without verifying anything. That's not policy. That's bias." The word hung in the air like something dangerous. People reacted to it instinctively. Some leaned back, others stiffened. No one wanted to be part of that conversation. Megan, still near the galley, swallowed hard. Her eyes darted to the passenger list again. The name was there, she was almost certain of it. Brooks, seat 2A. She took a small step forward. "Emily, maybe we should just—" "I said I have it handled," Emily snapped, not even turning her head. Megan stopped. Heat rushed to her face. The tray in her hands felt suddenly too heavy. Danielle watched that exchange, noted it, filed it away. Then she leaned back slightly in her seat, as if settling in for something longer than a disagreement. "You're escalating this," Danielle said quietly, "and you don't understand what that's going to cost you." Emily let out a sharp laugh, louder this time, inviting the room back onto her side. "What it's going to cost me," she repeated. "The only thing this is costing anyone is time." She gestured toward the aisle. "Last chance, stand up and move." Danielle didn't move. Outside the window, the sun dipped lower, casting longer shadows across the wing. Inside, the cabin felt tighter, warmer, the kind of pressure that builds before something breaks. And for the first time, doubt flickered. Not in Emily, not yet, in the people watching. Because Danielle Brooks did not look like someone who was losing. The whisperings started low, like wind slipping under a door, then spread row by row until the entire cabin carried it. Not loud enough to confront, just enough to judge. "She's not even trying to explain herself," Chloe Simmons murmured, tilting her head, eyes fixed on Danielle like she was watching a performance. "That's what they do, act calm, like they belong." Her companion nodded, lips pursed. "It's always the same story." Across the aisle, David Miller leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying Danielle more closely now. Not her clothes, not her silence, her control. There was something off about this situation, not chaotic enough, not messy enough. People who were bluffing usually slipped. She hadn't. Emily heard the whispers and straightened, drawing strength from them. This was her territory, her rules, her judgment. The cabin had always followed her lead before. "Let me make this simple," she said, her voice rising again, sharper now, designed to cut through any remaining doubt. "You are sitting in a seat you did not pay for." Danielle's gaze didn't waver. "You don't know that." "I know exactly that." "No," Danielle said, her tone still even, still controlled. "You believe that." A small pause. Almost nothing, but it landed. Emily stepped closer, too close now, the kind of distance meant to intimidate. "People like you always think the rules don't apply." There it was again, not hidden this time, not softened. Megan's breath caught in her throat. She looked down quickly, then back up, then toward the manifest again. Her fingers twitched. Every instinct told her to speak, to correct this, but Emily's presence filled the aisle like a wall. "Emily," she tried again, softer. Emily didn't even look at her. "Stay out of it." Megan fell silent, shame burning across her face. Danielle watched that too. Every small failure, every moment someone chose comfort over truth. Then she shifted slightly in her seat, just enough to uncross and recross her legs. A controlled movement, no rush, no panic, but it forced Emily to step back half an inch. Power, even when quiet, takes up space. "You're making assumptions," Danielle said, "and you're doing it publicly. That's the problem." Emily let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "No, the problem is you're refusing to move." She turned slightly, addressing the cabin now as if gathering a jury. "We have rules for a reason. If we let one person ignore them, then what? Everyone just sits wherever they want?" A few heads nodded. Reflex. Agreement felt safer than uncertainty. Chloe crossed her arms, satisfied. "Exactly." David didn't nod. He stayed still, eyes narrowing just slightly. Danielle didn't look at any of them. She kept her focus on Emily. "Call security," she said. The words landed flat, calm, certain. Emily blinked once, not expecting that. "I said call them," Danielle repeated, her voice still low, but now carrying something heavier, final. A ripple moved through the cabin. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. People were supposed to back down when pressure built, not invite more of it. Emily recovered quickly, lifting her chin. "You think I won't?" "I think you should," Danielle said. Megan's heart started pounding, too fast. She knew what would happen next. Once security got involved, there was no quiet resolution, no saving face. Everything would escalate. Everything would be documented. Emily turned sharply. "Megan, get security on standby." Megan hesitated. Just a second, but long enough. "Now," Emily snapped. Megan nodded quickly, stepping back, nearly bumping into the galley wall as she reached for the phone. Her hands shook as she dialed. Her voice came out low, controlled, but tight. We may need assistance in first class." Danielle watched her, expression unchanged. Emily turned back, folding her arms again, reclaiming her stance. "You've just made this much worse for yourself." Danielle tilted her head slightly, a small movement, thoughtful. "No," she said quietly, "you did." Outside, the light shifted again, shadows stretching longer across the wing. Inside, the cabin felt heavier, thicker, like the air itself was waiting. And somewhere beneath the tension, beneath the judgment, beneath the certainty Emily clung to, something else had taken root. Doubt. Not loud, not clear, but growing. Time slowed, but the tension didn't. It stretched, tighter, thinner, like something about to snap. Emily didn't move away. She stayed planted in the aisle, arms crossed, chin lifted, holding her ground as if the entire plane depended on it. Her control had always come from certainty, from knowing she could walk into any cabin, read it in seconds, and place people exactly where they belonged. Now, for the first time, that certainty felt challenged. "You're still sitting here," she said, voice low, controlled but sharper than before, "after I've made it very clear you don't belong." Danielle's fingers tapped once against the armrest, a quiet, deliberate sound. "You've made something clear," she said, "just not what you think." Emily exhaled slowly, like she was dealing with a difficult child. This is getting ridiculous. Behind her, Chloe leaned closer to the aisle, unable to contain herself anymore. "Honestly, just remove her already. We're all waiting." A man 2 seats back nodded. "Yeah, we paid to be here too." That word, paid, it settled into the room like a dividing line. David's jaw tightened. He looked at the others, then back at Danielle. Something about this wasn't adding up. The calm, the refusal to explain. It wasn't arrogance, it was something else, something measured. Emily caught the shift and pushed harder. "You're disrupting the entire cabin," she said, raising her voice again, pulling attention back to her. "Everyone here is being delayed because you refuse to follow a basic instruction." Danielle turned her head slightly, glancing at the passengers for the first time. Not defensive, not apologetic, just observing. "They're not delayed because of me," she said. "They're delayed because you chose to make this public." A flicker crossed Emily's face, gone almost instantly. "I chose to enforce policy." "No," Danielle replied, "you chose to enforce your assumptions." The word hit harder this time. Emily stepped forward again, closing the space Danielle had created earlier. "You don't get to twist this into something it's not." Danielle leaned back slightly, unbothered by the proximity. "I don't have to twist anything. You've said enough." A beat. Silence spread again, but it felt different now, less certain, less unified. Megan stood frozen near the galley, phone still in her hand after calling security. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She looked at Danielle, then at Emily, then back at the passenger list. The name was there. She knew it was. Why wasn't anyone checking? Because no one wanted to be wrong. Emily turned abruptly, grabbing a tray from the service cart. The motion was sharp, controlled, but edged with frustration. She needed to regain control of the cabin, restore order, reset the narrative. She moved down the aisle, offering drinks with tight, efficient movements. Smiles returned for some, short, practiced, but present. The performance resumed. "Sparkling water?" she asked Richard Foster. "Thank you," he said, relieved, taking the glass like nothing had happened. Helen nodded politely, though her eyes flicked once toward Danielle before dropping back to her knitting. Emily continued down the row, serving others, rebuilding the illusion, until she reached Danielle. She didn't stop. She walked past. No glance, no offer, nothing. Danielle noticed, of course she did, but she didn't react. She simply watched Emily move away, her expression unchanged, her silence louder than anything else in the cabin. Minutes passed. The tray grew lighter. Then Danielle spoke, her voice calm, cutting clean through the soft hum of the plane. "Could I have some water?" Emily stopped. Slowly she turned her head. "I'll get to you when I can," she said, flat, dismissive, then continued walking. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. Not enough to speak, just enough to feel it. David frowned openly now. This wasn't procedure, this wasn't professionalism, this was personal. Megan swallowed hard, her grip tightening at the edge of the galley counter. Danielle adjusted slightly in her seat, extending one leg just a little into the aisle, a natural movement, small, unremarkable. But Emily saw it, and something in her snapped. She changed direction without slowing, her steps sharper now, faster, deliberate. Then it happened. Her foot struck Danielle's leg. The tray tilt, glasses tipped, water spilled forward, splashing across Danielle's lap, dripping on the polished floor. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the cabin. Emily gasped, but it was too loud, too practiced. "Watch where you're putting your legs," she snapped. "You've caused a mess." Danielle looked down at the water soaking into her trousers, then back up. Slowly. "You walked into me," she said. Emily's expression hardened. "You shouldn't have been in the way." The air shifted again, heavier now, darker, and this time no one mistook it as an accident. The water spread quickly, darkening the fabric across Danielle's lap, dripping in slow, steady drops onto the polished floor. No one moved to help. For a moment, everything held still, the kind of silence that feels heavy in the chest. Danielle didn't rush. She reached down, brushing the water lightly with her hand, then rested both palms calmly on her thighs. Her breathing stayed even, her face unreadable. Emily stood over her, tray still tilted, jaw tight, eyes sharp with something that had crossed beyond irritation. This wasn't about order anymore. This was about control slipping through her fingers and her refusal to let it go. "I said, watch where you're putting your legs," Emily repeated, louder now, for the room. Danielle lifted her gaze slowly. "And I said, you walked into me." Their eyes locked. Across the aisle, David shifted forward in his seat, his voice cutting in, calm but firm. That didn't look like an accident. Emily didn't look at him. "Sir, I suggest you stay out of this." "I would," David replied, "if this looked like your job. It doesn't." A ripple moved through the cabin. Not agreement, not yet, but something closer to discomfort, turning into awareness. Chloe scoffed, shaking her head. "Oh, please, now it's a whole scene." But her voice had lost some of its certainty. Megan stepped forward before she could stop herself, grabbing a napkin from the cart. "Ma'am, let me help." "I've got it handled," Emily snapped again, cutting her off without even turning. Megan froze, the napkin still in her hand. Danielle took the napkin gently anyway, her fingers brushing Megan's for a brief second. A silent acknowledgement, a quiet thank you. Then she spoke. "I've asked for nothing except basic respect," Danielle said, her voice low, steady, carrying further than it should have. "The same respect you've shown everyone else on this plane." Emily let out a short, sharp laugh. "Respect?" She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice, but not enough to keep it private. "Respect is earned." Danielle's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did, something colder. "No," she said, "respect is given, or it's taken away." Emily's lips curled. "People like you always think they deserve something they haven't earned." The words landed harder than anything before. This time, no one could pretend they didn't hear it. Helen Foster's knitting stopped completely, her hands stilled in her lap. Richard shifted beside her, uncomfortable now, but still silent. David sat back slowly, eyes narrowing, his expression no longer neutral. Megan looked down, her chest tight, her stomach twisting. She knew this was wrong, knew it had gone too far, but fear held her in place. Danielle leaned back in her seat, the damp fabric clinging to her skin, the cold spreading, but she didn't react to it. She held Emily's gaze. "You've said enough," Danielle said quietly. Emily's control cracked. It was small, a flicker, but it was there. "You don't get to tell me what's enough," she snapped, her voice rising again, sharp and brittle. "You don't belong here, and the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." Danielle tilted her head slightly, studying her, measuring something deeper now. "No," she said, "the easier this will be is if you stop." Emily's hand tightened around the tray, her knuckles whitened. "Stop?" she repeated, incredulous. "After everything you've done since you walked on this plane?" Danielle didn't respond immediately. She let the silence stretch, let the room feel it. Then, softly, "I haven't done anything." That was it. That was the moment something inside Emily broke. Her hand moved before her mind caught up. Fast, sharp. The sound cracked through the cabin. A slap. Danielle's head turned slightly with the force, her cheek flushing instantly, a sharp line of red rising against her skin. Gasps erupted. Chairs shifted. Someone stood halfway up before freezing again. Megan's hand flew to her mouth. David was already on his feet. That's enough. Even Chloe went quiet. Emily stood there, breathing harder now, her chest rising and falling, her hand still slightly raised, as if she didn't fully understand what she had just done. Danielle didn't touch her face. She turned back slowly, Her expression hadn't shattered. It had hardened, completely. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," Danielle said. And this time, no one in that cabin doubted it. No one spoke. The sound of that slap still lingered in the air, as if it hadn't decided to fade yet. It sat there, heavy, undeniable, pressing down on every person in the cabin. Emily's hand slowly lowered, but her fingers trembled, just slightly, enough for someone watching closely to notice, enough for her to feel it and hate it. Danielle didn't move. Her head remained turned for a second longer, her cheek marked, the red imprint sharp against her skin. Then she faced forward again, slow, controlled, like nothing about this moment belonged to anyone but her. She placed both hands neatly on her lap. Still calm, too calm. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," she repeated, her voice softer now, but somehow heavier, like it carried weight no one else could see. Emily swallowed. The sound was small, almost lost in the quiet. She forced a laugh, but it came out thin. "You keep saying that," she said, trying to rebuild something that was already slipping. "What exactly are you going to do?" Danielle didn't answer right away. She looked at Emily, not with anger, not with fear, with judgment. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that decides. "You'll see," Danielle said. A shift moved through the cabin again, subtle but stronger now. People weren't leaning toward Emily anymore. They were watching her, measuring her. David stood fully now, stepping into the aisle, putting himself between Danielle and Emily without even realizing it. "You crossed a line," he said, voice low but firm. "That was assault." Emily's jaw tightened. "Sit down, sir." "No." One word, flat, final. Emily turned toward him, her control unraveling at the edges. "If you continue to interfere, I'll have you removed as well." David didn't move. "Try it." Silence pressed in again. Megan stood frozen near the galley, her chest rising fast, her eyes wide. Her phone was still in her hand. She didn't remember picking it up again, didn't remember pressing anything, but it was there, recording. Her gaze flicked to Danielle, then to Emily, then back again. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was something else, something irreversible. Danielle shifted slightly in her seat, reaching calmly for her phone. No rush, no hesitation, just a deliberate movement like turning a key in a lock. Emily noticed immediately. "What are you doing?" Danielle didn't look at her. Her thumbs moved across the screen, quick, precise. A message sent, another. Then she placed the phone back on the armrest beside her. "You'll find out," she said. Emily scoffed, but it lacked force now. "Calling someone isn't going to help you." Danielle finally looked up again. "It's not for help." That landed. Emily felt it, didn't understand it, but felt it. Megan's breath caught again. Something about the way Danielle said that made her stomach drop. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't fear dressed as confidence. This was certainty. Across the cabin, Helen Foster slowly set her knitting aside. Her hands rested in her lap now, fingers laced together. She looked at Danielle longer this time, really looked. Richard shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Let's not get involved," he muttered under his breath. Helen didn't respond. Chloe glanced around, her earlier confidence gone, replaced with something tighter. "This is getting out of hand," she whispered, but no one echoed her this time. The balance had shifted. Emily felt it slipping, even if she wouldn't admit it. She straightened again, forcing her shoulders back, reclaiming posture, if not control. "Security will be here any minute," she said, louder now, addressing the room as much as Danielle. "We'll resolve this properly." Danielle leaned back slightly, her posture relaxed, her expression composed. "Yes," she said quietly, "we will." Outside, the sun dipped lower, the light fading into something colder. Inside, the cabin felt smaller, tighter, like it was holding its breath. And for the first time since this began, Emily Carter was no longer the one in control of the room. She just didn't realize it yet. The wait stretched longer than it should have. Not minutes, something heavier. Every second felt watched, measured, held under a lens no one could escape. Emily stood in the aisle, posture rigid, but her eyes moved too much now. Quick glances, small recalculations. She checked the front of the cabin, then the rear, then back to Danielle, as if expecting something to appear and fix what had already broken. Nothing came. Danielle remained exactly where she was, still, unmoved. The red mark on her cheek had deepened, but she didn't touch it, didn't acknowledge it. She sat as if the discomfort belonged to someone else, as if the entire moment existed outside of her control because she had already decided how it would end. Megan couldn't stop staring at her. There was something in that stillness that didn't make sense, not for someone who had just been humiliated in front of a full cabin, not for someone who had just been hit. It wasn't strength the way people talked about it. It was something quieter, more dangerous. Across the aisle, David remained standing, arms at his sides now, but his presence firm. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. His silence had already chosen a side. Helen Foster leaned slightly toward her husband. "This is wrong," she whispered. Richard exhaled, uncomfortable. "It's not our business." "It became our business the moment it happened in front of us," she replied, her voice steady, eyes still on Danielle. That landed differently than anything else had. Chloe shifted in her seat, crossing and uncrossing her legs, her earlier confidence gone. She avoided looking directly at Danielle now, as if eye contact would force her to reconsider everything she had already decided. Emily noticed all of it, the shift, the silence, the way the room no longer moved with her. Her jaw tightened. "Let's be clear," she said suddenly, her voice sharper than necessary, pushing back against the loss of control. "This situation exists because of her refusal to comply." No one answered. That was new. Emily's eyes flicked across the passengers, searching for agreement, for validation, for anything that would anchor her authority again. She didn't find it. Instead, she found hesitation, and that made something colder settle in her chest. Danielle reached for her phone again, this time slower. She picked it up, glanced at the screen briefly, then set it back down without typing anything. A small movement, but Emily felt it like a signal she couldn't read. "What now?" Emily asked, her voice tighter than before. "Another message?" Danielle didn't respond. She leaned back, folding one arm loosely across her lap, her gaze drifting toward the window for just a moment. Outside, the sky had shifted into deeper tones, gold fading into blue, the horizon stretching endless and quiet. Inside, nothing felt quiet. "You think you're untouchable," Emily said, stepping forward again, her control slipping into something more aggressive now. "That's what this is, isn't it?" Danielle turned her head slowly, looking back at her. "No," she said. One word. Calm. Final. Emily let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but it broke halfway through. "Then what is it?" Danielle held her gaze. "It's accountability." The word landed harder than any accusation. Emily's stomach tightened. She didn't understand why. Megan did. She felt it in the way her chest tightened and the way her fingers curled slightly around her phone. She knew something was coming, something bigger than this moment, bigger than the cabin. She glanced toward the cockpit, waiting. As on cue, the door opened. The pilot stepped out. Mid-50s, controlled, professional, but his face was wrong. Too tight. Too pale. His eyes scanned the cabin quickly, landing first on Emily, then shifting past her. To Danielle. Everything in him changed in that instant. Not dramatically, not outwardly, but enough. Enough for Megan to see it. Enough for David to notice. Enough for the air in the room to shift again. He walked forward, steps measured but urgent beneath the surface. "Emily," he said quietly, stopping beside her. "What?" she snapped, turning toward him, irritation immediate. "I've got this handled." The pilot didn't look at her. Not right away. "You need to step aside," he said. The words were calm, but they carried something else, something final. Emily frowned, confusion flashing across her face. "Excuse me?" The pilot's gaze moved back to Danielle for a fraction of a second, then back to Emily. "You need to step aside," he repeated. And for the first time since this began, Emily Carter didn't have an answer ready. Emily stared at him, waiting for the rest of the sentence that never came. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice sharper now, defensive. "I'm handling a disruptive passenger." The pilot didn't move. He held her gaze for a second longer than necessary, then glanced again, brief, almost instinctive, toward Danielle. That glance did something to the room. People noticed. Not consciously, not all at once, but enough. "You need to step aside," he said again, quieter this time, but firmer. Emily let out a short breath, shaking her head slightly as if dismissing something absurd. "No, not until this is resolved." "It is being resolved." The words landed flat, certain. Emily blinked. "Resolved how?" The pilot straightened slightly, his posture shifting into something more formal, controlled, careful. "I just received a call from management," he said. A pause. Then, "The owner of this aircraft is on board." Silence. Not the kind that fades, the kind that locks everything in place. Emily's expression didn't change at first. Then it did, slowly. A flicker of confusion, then disbelief. "That's not possible," she said. "I would know." The pilot didn't answer immediately. He looked past her, to Danielle. Then he said it. "It's her." The words dropped into the cabin like something heavy hitting water. No splash, just impact. For a second, no one reacted. Then everything shifted at once. Chloe inhaled sharply, her hand flying to her chest. "What?" Richard Foster's newspaper slipped slightly in his grip. Helen's eyes widened, her fingers tightening together in her lap. David didn't move. He just nodded once, like something he already suspected had finally been confirmed. Megan's breath caught so hard it hurt. Her eyes snapped to Danielle, then back to the pilot, then back again. Her mind raced, trying to rearrange everything she had just witnessed into something that made sense. It didn't. Emily laughed. Not loud, not confident. Too fast. "That's not funny," she said, her voice thinner now. "There's no way." No one joined her. The absence of agreement hit harder than any argument. Danielle remained seated. She didn't rise, didn't rush, didn't react to the chaos beginning to ripple through the cabin. She simply looked at Emily, calm, unmoved, as if this moment had already happened in her mind long before it reached reality. The pilot stepped slightly to the side, clearing the space between them. "Ma'am," he said, addressing Danielle now, his tone shifting completely, respectful, careful. "Is there anything you need?" That was it. That was the confirmation. The cabin broke. Whispers surged, louder now, uncontrolled. "She owns the plane? No way. Are you serious?" Chloe leaned forward, her voice barely contained. "Oh my God!" Helen Foster looked at Danielle again, this time without hesitation, without distance, just recognition and something like regret. Emily didn't move. Her face drained of color, then flushed again, uneven, unstable. Her eyes darted around the cabin, searching for something, support, denial, anything that would undo what had just been said. She found nothing, only eyes, watching, judging. Danielle finally shifted. Slowly, she placed her hands on the armrests and stood. The movement was unhurried, controlled, every inch of it deliberate. The cabin quieted again, but not out of confusion this time, out of attention. Danielle adjusted her blazer, smoothing it lightly as if preparing for something far more important than what had just happened. Her gaze moved across the cabin, not lingering, just acknowledging. Then it settled on Emily. When she spoke, her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "My name is Danielle Brooks," she said. A pause. "I own this aircraft." Another pause. "And I own the airline that operates it." The words didn't echo. They didn't have to. They landed exactly where they were meant to. And in that moment, everything Emily Carter believed about this situation, about control, about judgment, about who belonged and who didn't, collapsed completely. She just hadn't fallen yet. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. For a second, she looked smaller, not physically, but in the way her certainty drained out of her all at once, leaving nothing solid behind. That can't be right," she said finally, her voice unsteady, reaching for something that no longer existed. "There must be some mistake." "There isn't," the pilot replied. Simple. Final. The cabin watched. No whispers now, no shifting, just stillness, like everyone understood they were witnessing the moment something irreversible took shape. Danielle stepped forward. Not fast, not aggressive, measured. Each step quiet against the floor, but heavy enough to draw every eye with it. She stopped just short of Emily, leaving a deliberate space between them. "You didn't know who I was," Danielle said. Her voice remained calm, but it carried something sharper now. Not anger, judgment. And that's exactly the problem. Emily shook her head slightly, her breath uneven. I was just following procedure." "No," Danielle said. One word, cut clean. "You weren't." Emily's hands clenched at her sides. "I thought—" "You didn't think," Danielle interrupted, still calm. "You decided." A beat. "You decided I didn't belong here before you checked anything, before you asked a single real question." Emily's eyes flickered, searching, failing. "I was trying to maintain order." "You created disorder," Danielle said. Another step closer. "You humiliated a passenger. You denied service. You escalated a situation that didn't exist until you made it exist." The words landed one after another, precise, controlled, unavoidable. Around them, the passengers didn't look away. Helen Foster lowered her gaze for a moment, then lifted it again, as if forcing herself to witness the consequences of what she had stayed silent through. David stood still, arms now folded, his expression firm. Not surprised, just resolved. Megan felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't fear. It was clarity, the kind that comes too late to prevent something, but just in time to understand it. Emily took a step back. Just one. "You're twisting this," she said, but the conviction was gone. She refused to comply. Danielle didn't react to the deflection. "You assaulted me," she said. The word sat heavier than anything else. Assaulted. It changed the room. Emily's breathing quickened. I didn't mean to—" "You didn't mean to get caught," Danielle said. Silence. Emily's eyes widened slightly. "That's not—" "But you did," Danielle continued, "and now there are consequences." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She turned her head slightly toward the pilot. "I want this addressed immediately." "Yes, ma'am," he replied, without hesitation. Emily's gaze snapped toward him, then back to Danielle, panic rising now, visible, uncontrolled. "Wait, this doesn't have to—" "It does," Danielle said. No softness, no space for negotiation. "You represent this company every time you put on that uniform, and today you failed in every possible way." Emily shook her head again, faster now. "Please, I didn't know." Danielle's expression didn't change. "That's the point," she said. "You didn't know, and you still chose to treat me the way you did." A pause. "And if you do it to me," she added quietly, "you've done it to others." That landed deeper than anything else, because it wasn't about this moment anymore. It was about a pattern, a system, a truth bigger than the cabin. The weight of it pressed down on Emily, visible now in the way her shoulders dropped, in the way her voice broke when she tried to speak again. "I can fix this," she said, grasping at the last thread of control she thought she had. "I can make this right." Emily looked at her. Long enough. Then, "No," she said. And in that single word, everything Emily Carter had left collapsed completely. The sound of footsteps came first. Firm, measured, official. 2 uniformed officers stepped into the cabin, their presence cutting clean through what remained of the tension. Not loud, not aggressive, just final. Emily turned toward them, her breath catching, her eyes wide now, searching for something, anything that might still save her. "This is a misunderstanding," she said quickly, her voice breaking at the edges. This isn't—" The first officer didn't respond to her. He looked at Danielle. "Ma'am," he said, respectful, steady, "we received your report." Danielle held his gaze for a brief moment, then nodded once. "Yes," she said, "I'm pressing charges." That was it. No hesitation, no anger, just decision. Emily froze. The words didn't register all at once. They hit in pieces. Pressing. Charges. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Wait, please, this doesn't have to—" The second officer stepped forward, calm but firm. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault." The click of the handcuffs echoed louder than the slap ever had. Passengers flinched. Megan's breath caught again, her hand tightening around the edge of the galley. She watched as Emily's wrists were pulled gently but firmly behind her back. The same hands that had carried authority minutes ago now trembled. "Please," Emily said again, her voice breaking fully now. "Miss Brooks, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I didn't—" Danielle didn't move. She didn't soften. She didn't look away. "Your apology doesn't change what you chose to do," she said quietly. Emily's shoulders collapsed inward, her posture folding in on itself as the officers guided her toward the aisle. The same aisle she had stood in with control just moments ago. Now every step echoed differently. No one spoke. No one defended her. Phones were raised. Eyes followed, not with curiosity anymore. With judgment. With understanding. As Emily passed, Chloe looked down, avoiding eye contact. Richard Foster cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Helen watched, her expression tight, reflective, as if something inside her had shifted permanently. David stepped back slightly to give space, his gaze steady, not triumphant, just resolved. Megan lowered her eyes for a moment, then looked up again, forcing herself to witness the end of it all. Emily was escorted off the plane. The door closed behind her. And just like that, the air changed. Lighter, quieter, but not untouched. Danielle turned back to the cabin. Her presence filled the space now in a different way, not hidden, not understated, clear, controlled. She looked at the passengers, her gaze moving from face to face, not accusing, but not absolving either. "I apologize," she said, "for what you had to witness." Her voice was steady, grounded, carrying across the room without force. "This is not the standard I expect, and it will not happen again." A pause, then movement. David nodded once, a small gesture of respect. Helen followed, her hands coming together in a quiet clap. It spread slowly at first, then stronger, until the cabin filled with applause. Not for the spectacle, for the clarity, for the line that had been drawn. Danielle turned slightly toward Megan. "I noticed you," she said. Megan's eyes widened. "Ma'am, You hesitated," Danielle continued, "but you knew what was right." Megan swallowed hard, her voice soft. "I should have done more." "You will," Danielle said. That was enough. More than enough. Danielle adjusted her blazer once more, then stepped toward the exit. Her assistants were already waiting outside, but she didn't rush. She moved with the same measured calm she had carried from the beginning. Not because nothing had happened, but because everything had. As she stepped off the plane, the sky stretched wide and open ahead of her. And inside, something had changed that wouldn't be undone. Not just for her, for everyone who had watched. If this story moved you, take a second to like, subscribe, and drop 3 words in the comments. Respect above all.